Today, we're going back to the beginning of the Science of in 2020, where I took a look at the science behind the Flood from the Halo franchise, covering their parasitic nature and seeing how they compare to real-world parasites. Today, we're taking a look at the variety of plasma-based weaponry used by the Covenant throughout the series, seeing how this ionized gas could be manipulated into swords and shots. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Science Of, where I slowly overanalyze your favourite games, shows and more. It's been a long time since I took a look at the science behind Halo's Flood faction, but with so many sci-fi elements crammed into each game, it's always tricky to decide where to start to find some scientific facts. Rather than looking at the science behind helmet-based augmented reality, or the powered suit that keeps Master Chief alive throughout infinite PvP matches, we're going to take a look at the science behind the many plasma-based weapons seen throughout the series. And I feel like people would be disappointed if I didn't start with one of gaming's most iconic swords. The Type 1 energy sword has been a staple of the Halo franchise since its first installment, and whilst its design may have been refined and given glow-ups between games, its use has always stayed the same. You stab people with the pointy bit to win those arena matches. The energy sword consists of a curved hilt contained in an energy storage module and a device that projects the energy to form it into a blade. The blade itself is actually formed of two separate ionized blades of free-moving electron-based gas. This is able to keep its shape thanks to two small magnetic field generators built into the handle of the weapon. And it's this detail that we're going to take a look at today, investigating how plasma can be shaped and moulded to form a plasma sword as seen in the Halo series. If you remember my video on the science of Mario's Fire Flower, then you'll remember that plasma is an ionized gas, consisting of positive ions and free-moving electrons. But how can this ionized gas be used to cut through the waves of enemies seen throughout the Halo campaigns? Seeing as we know that fire becomes a plasma when it's hot enough, it would be possible to melt and burn Master Chief's armour. But in order to cut through it, we need something a little more specialised. We need a tool called a plasma cutter, a tool that utilises the fourth state of matter to cut through metals. The basic plasma cutting process involves creating an electrical channel of superheated electrically ionised gas from the plasma cutter itself through the metal surface being cut. This is accomplished by blowing a mixture of compressed gases through a focused nozzle at high speeds towards the metal. An electrical arc is then formed within the gas between the electrode near the gas nozzle and the metal surface being cut. An electrical arc, or arc discharge, is an electrical breakdown of a gas that produces a prolonged electrical discharge. This electrical arc ionizes some of the gas and creates an electronically conductive channel of plasma. As energy from the cutter torch travels down this plasma, it produces enough heat to melt through the workpiece, with the high velocity plasma and compressed gas pushing any molten metal out of the way, effectively producing a clean cut. But this is how plasma sheets cut steel and aluminium. It's not exactly indicative of how an energy sword could cut its way through Mark 6 armour. To see how these plasma blades could be used for good, let's see how plasma cutters are used in a medical capacity. Plasma has been used in medical fields as far back as the early 20th century to get rid of malignant tissues, but they can also be used in surgery as a viable option for typical steel scalpels. Whilst the extreme heat produced from the plasma blade is able to cut skin with greater precision, it also cauterizes wounds as it cuts, reducing bleeding from surgery significantly and ensuring that tissue damage is kept minimal. Great, so now we know that these plasma blades can not only be used to cut through Master Chief's armour, but can also be used to further the medical field, and in fact is already being used in hospitals around the world. But what does this have to do with getting a kill streak? Well, let's see how we could possibly produce a plasma blade, the shape of the energy sword seen throughout the Halo series. Plasma is formed of ionized air, and as such it can be influenced by magnets. But this can't be done with any old plasma. For instance, if you put a magnet near fire, the fire won't bend towards it. This is because fire, as a plasma, is net neutral and has no overall charge. In order to shape this plasma, we need to look for a much larger device called a tokamak, a fusion reactor device that produces powerful magnetic fields to confine plasma in the shape of a torus or donut. These have been in the scientific consciousness since Soviet physicists Igor Tamm and Andrei Sakharov conceptualized them in the 1950s. Fusion energy scientists believe that devices such as these are the leading plasma confinement concept for fusion power plants, with one set of magnetic coils generating an intense toroidal magnetic field directed a long way around a torus, and a central solenoid that generates a second magnetic field along the polonoid direction along the width of the torus. These two fields result in a twisted magnetic field that confines the particles of plasma, with a third set of coils generating an outer poloidal field that shapes and positions the plasma within the initial two fields. The main problem with using magnets to shape plasma is that you need the magnets to completely encompass the plasma in order to get it into the right shape. But even if you had that, then the magnets in the arrangement would still get those rounded edges, not exactly suitable for spearing runs. This is because magnetic fields have a finite curl and zero divergence. Imagine you had a pool of water moving around. At each point within that pool, the water's current will have both a direction and a velocity. The curl can be thought of as how much current the water has. The divergence is how much the water diverges away or converges towards a fixed point. If you put a drain in the middle of that pool, then the water will flow straight in, converging on a fixed point and swirling in an inward spiral. A magnetic field has curl but no divergence, so field lines can swirl to their heart's content, but they cannot diverge or converge, so they circle back round to where they started. We see this by dropping iron filings around a magnet and observing the characteristic patterns that they make. This also means that you'll never be able to produce a blade that's as flat as the energy sword, as those curves occur in all directions. Now what you could do is you could make a sword in the shape of the energy sword, but have the blade on the edge be made out of plasma like a little plasma cutter, with the main body having many little plasma cutters around the edge. The downside of this being that the device would be way heavier than an energy blade and far less useful, as the blades would tend to be very short. But the energy sword isn't the only plasma based weapon in the Halo universe. The Covenant capital ships use a wide range of plasma based weapons, including plasma torpedoes, laser turrets and cannons. But these aren't exactly handheld, so let's take a look at the many different plasma rifles seen throughout the Halo franchise. We could look at any of these, from the Type 25 plasma pistol to the Type 52 plasma launcher, but in general they'll work in the same way, with the weapon guiding a plasma beam towards an enemy. This plasma is normally stabilised in magnetic fields before being released in a single direction. Whilst this is pretty solid science fiction, there was a period in the 1990s where the Philips laboratory developed a project called the Marauder, and that's not just a threatening name. It stands for the Magnetic Accelerated Ring to achieve ultra-high directed energy and radiation. This ring accelerator experiment was supposedly a man-made Death Star that could fire condensed plasma at almost 7 million miles per hour. Now, this experiment hasn't produced anything since the 1990s, and it's not entirely surprising, as once the plasma has left its magnetic confinement, it would lose its energy very quickly. So there we go. The energy sword, one of the coolest weapons in gaming, might make a better scalpel than a tool of war. But then again, I don't see Master Chief needing any surgery whilst out in a battlefield. The closest things we have to these plasma weapons in reality are still decades behind the innovations that plasma scalpels have provided, with plasma guns being a fantasy on a large scale, let alone being at the point where they could fit in your hand. As always, if you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to help combat the ever-changing and frustrating YouTube algorithm, then make sure you share the video to help my channel grow. If you have any scientific subject or topic that you'd like to see me cover in the future, then please tell me in the comments down below. As well as that, follow me on Twitter to get updates on the latest science of videos, and join my Discord for chats about science, gaming and more. But until then, this has been the Science of Halo. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. If you're looking for game-based content, then you can always join me on Twitch, where I live stream 3 times a week, playing all manner of games suggested by the community. Or if you want to support the channel even further, you could also contribute to my Patreon, where you'll get behind the scenes access to the creation of all videos, as well as access to my private Minecraft server.